Welcome, I'm Daniel Vitalis, and I want to thank you for taking my Chaga course. And we're doing this video to introduce you visually to some of the techniques that we talked about on the call. The reason that we're doing it like this is because, when you listen to somebody describe a process, like for instance how to make a decoction, it can be a little challenging to convert that audio file into something visual for yourself. In other words, it can be difficult to actually put it in practice unless you see it. So I wanted to show you a few things. This right here is a chunk of the Chaga sclerotia, or the main body of the Chaga mushroom. So, we probably talked on the call about the appearance of it looking like it's been burned or blackened. When we break that off the birch tree, we reveal the inside here, the mycelial portion. And we can see that's a real corky kind of substance. And it's like a tan, a light brown, almost a golden color. And that outer surface is always going to be gnarled and blackened. Sometimes you'll see things on trees that'll be mistaken for a chaga. They'll have a real gnarly appearance like a burl on a tree, but it won't have that burned, blackened look to it. So that's specifically what we're looking for. We're going to make a decoction out of this chaga mushroom today, and that's just to illustrate to you the basic process of how to decoct or to boil or to make a tea out of this mushroom. Now, as always, the foundation of really good teas and really good elixirs is the quality of the water that we're using. This is spring water from here in Maine that I harvested myself in a glass bottle with a cork. And this water's never been in contact with a synthetic material. It's never been in plastic. So, this is really pure crystal. It's a liquid crystal. It's crystalline water. You can see over here that I'm working with a ceramic teapot. That's something I've gotten into, ceramics or really high quality steels. You'll notice there's a steel pot over here on my burner, but it's not a regular steel pot. That's a titanium alloy steel. And the reason is stainless steel does leach a bit of metal into your water. So it will leach things like nickel, and that's a toxic metal. So, things like ceramics, high quality ceramics that are made with a non-toxic glaze, and that's important, or high quality steels or Pyrex glass vessels are my favorite, just because we get the purest product. We yield the purest product out of something like that. We're starting with really pure ingredients, and so we don't want to contaminate our ingredients with plastics or with metals. So we're going to take this really high quality spring water here, and we're just going to fill this teapot up. Now I'd say this is roughly a half a gallon, maybe say 2 liters in here, maybe 2.5, 3 liters of water. Traditionally, about 3 square centimeters of chaga that's going to be used to make a liter of tea. That means we're going to need, roughly a chunk of about the size of that to make this tea with. I'm going to give you a few options of how we can do that. We're going to turn that water up. We're going to let that water come to a boil. And that's important when we're working with mushrooms. We want to usually boil them if we're making a tea out of them. And that's because of their tough chitinous structure. Chitin is the name of the material that their cell walls are made of, and we need a high heat in order to break that apart and release the polysaccharides that are inside, or the medicines that are inside the cells of this mushroom. Now, a few options we have. Now, there's a bigger chunk right there, right? And sometimes if I'm feeling real abundant with chaga, and here in Maine we are real abundant with it, so I often have quite a bit of it around. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll bring my water to a boil, and I'll just drop a whole chunk right in there. When I've boiled it for 2 hours, as we discussed in the audio portion of this course, once it's boiled 2 hours, what I'll often do is remove that and then set it somewhere to dry. And the next time I need a tea, I'll just set it back in. Now I could reuse that several times, even maybe 5 times, 10 times, and each time it'll yield a slightly lighter colored liquid over time until it's barely extracting anything out, and that's when we throw this away. So that's one way to do that. Another way to do it would be to break off a chunk. Now, a great way to break these down is with maybe put a towel over the top of it and hit it with a hammer on a hard surface. That'll snap this into a bunch of pieces, into parts, because it's real brittle. And we break it down into chunks about that big. Now, a chunk this size is really ideal for a teapot about this size. So I can just drop that in there. That's what, 2 square inches maybe? And we drop that right in there and boil that up. Now that's about a perfect amount there. And we might even be able to get 2 or 3 extractions out of this piece. There's another way as well, and that would be to break this down even further to expose more of its surface area. We'll get a better yield out of the first tee if we powder this down, but we won't be able to keep reusing it. But there are some good reasons to do that. One, it's going to stretch a piece of chaga a lot longer. If you broke this big chunk down into powder, you're going to get more for your money out of it, essentially. So that's what I'd recommend to somebody who has a piece of chaga maybe that they got from someone else or that they ordered or that they found in the woods but aren't going to be able to get a lot more. A couple ways you could do that. One, with stone in a mortar and pestle like this, and we could actually put this piece in here and powder it right down. Now you can see just from that light pounding there, it started to break right up, and that's because it's a real brittle material. So it's very corky, very brittle, and it's easy to break apart in a mortar and pestle, as long as you have a good one there. If you've got like a wooden one or a ceramic mortar and pestle, it's not going to work too good. Now another option would be to take a high-speed blender. I brought my Vitamix over here for that, and I dried it out real well. Now, what you'd want to do before you do something like this is take like a towel, paper towel, and dry the inside of this out completely. You don't want to have little water droplets in there because that's going to cause the chaga to stick if you try to blend it dry. Now what we can do is take the dry bits of chaga put a lid right on there. Now you could do this with chunks up to about the size of that piece I threw in here. You could even fill this blender halfway with chaga, and I've done this before, so I know that it works. We can take lots of chaga in chunks, fill it about halfway, just turn the blender on, and grind it right down to a powder.